Hey everybody, welcome to the next chapter here on Patreon. When I finally made the decision with my family to move to Russia, the next step was to start to downsize and liquidate a lot of the stuff we had here in America. And so we decided to hold a moving to Russia garage sale. Now, we've been living in this town for about 10 years, so everybody knew us and they knew who we were. And I think when they saw the sign and they saw what was there, they had to stop. And I think everybody we knew in the town came by during the weekend. We had the moving to Russia garage sale. And just to ask us what was going on. And, it was just kind of the same old story. We had an adventure in front of us, and we decided as a family that we were going to take it. I think my son was about 8, my daughter was about 6, and we were ready for something extraordinary. And I told the story of what happened to me in Russia and how I felt and what had gone on. And I just saw it as a land of opportunity. I felt like there was a place that we could go and have true freedom, a different kind of freedom than the freedom we were kind of having in America. And so we liquidated everything and we got on an airplane. We had 32 pieces of luggage because, there were two girls in the crowd and they couldn't let go of anything. So, we had 32 pieces of luggage and 2 cat cages. We had decided we had 2 cats we had gotten almost at birth, and we decided that we weren't going to let them go, and we were going to take them with us on our adventure. So we had a couple cat cages, and our cats were in there, and we landed. I remember we landed in we had a layover in it was in Frankfurt, in Germany. And we had to change planes, and we got off the plane, and then we went to get on the plane, and we were sitting in the plane and getting ready to take off, and I hear some lady holler, "Man, I wonder whose luggage that is." And I look outside, and here's all our luggage and the cat cages sitting out there on the runway. And I'm thinking, we should be taking off. Why is that not on the plane? And I hear over the speaker, "Mr. Ziegler, could you please come to the front of the plane?" So I walk up to the front of the plane, and I said, "Have we got a problem? Is there something going on?" And she's like, "Yeah, the customs wants to talk to you out there." So I walk out, and it turned out it was more security than customs. And the guy was sitting there, he had a gun on, wearing a gun across his chest, and he looked at me and he said, "Are all of these luggages yours?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Okay, well, come down here then." And he takes me down to the first piece, points at it. "Is this piece of luggage yours?" I say, "Yeah." "Is this piece of luggage yours?" I said, "They're all mine." He goes, "No, no, no. Is this piece of luggage yours?" "All 28. Well, the whole plane is watching us out the window. They're laughing. Finally gets to the cats. Is this cat yours?" "Yes." "Is this cat yours?" "Yes." He goes, "Okay, get back on the plane." So we get on the plane. I get on the plane and we take off for Kiev. Now we landed in Kiev, and it was interesting because before I left Kiev, I had a translator who was going around for me translating. I had kind of 2 translators. One was Yuri, and Yuri was Pasha's friend, Emma's friend, and he was a lawyer, and he was a really nice guy, and his mom and dad were very famous in Russia, and he was pretty popular there and stuff. And the other, I met a lady, and she was an English teacher, and so I took her on as my translator. So when we landed in Kiev, it was raining, it was kind of cold. We were looking out the window, and there's my translator with the truck. And so we get off the plane and we load our 32 pieces of luggage into the truck, and we hop in the car with the translator. And she says to me, that apartment you had me rent before you left, it's not available anymore. Things haven't gone so well since Perestroika." And she said, I got a place you can stay in, but it's $100 a night. Now, the apartment I had rented before I left was $40 a month. And it was in the center square, top of one of the nice buildings overlooking the Central Park. And I was just like, I'll pay $40 a month. I'll rent it for a year just in case I ever come back to visit, So I said, $100 a night? No way. I said, we'll burn through our savings in no time if we got to pay $100 a night. It can't be that here. I know what things cost here. There's no way. So she said, "Well, what are you willing to pay?" And I said, "Well, $5. And she said, "Okay, that's enough." So she took us to an apartment. We unloaded all our stuff into the apartment. And I was a little bit disappointed and upset because things didn't, the whole brilliant future was kind of getting dim real fast. And, I could see Kathy and the kids kind of wondered, what are we doing here? And so I said, well, the next day I said to the translator, come on, pick me up. I'm going to see the mayor and some of the other people I met, some of the parliament members. I'm going to go get me a place. I'm going to figure out what's going on here. And so she came the next day and I went and we made the rounds and visited a whole bunch of people. And, I'm telling them, look, I really need help. I need an apartment. I got to find some place to stay. I really want to stay here. And she's translating and they're smiling and nodding. And, I'm just like, I don't get it. I get back and I'm like, what's going on to the translator? Nobody wants to help me. I don't get what's going on, This went on for a couple of days. And then I ran into Yuri on the street and I said, Yuri, God, I can't get it. I don't get it. I can't get an apartment, and paying $5 a day to stay in this place. And, I don't know what's going on. It just seems kind of strange. And he said to my driver who was driving us, he asked him, what's going on here? Ziggy can't get a place. And the driver said, what's he talking about? Everybody we stopped at offered him a place. And it hit me. The translator, it turned out, was telling these people, he's fine. He doesn't need anything. He's staying in this apartment and he's really happy. Because she was getting half of the $5 a day. And she didn't want to lose her gravy train. So I fired the translator. The driver said, I got an apartment right next to mine. It's $45 a month. You can stay in it. It's a beautiful place, and you'll love it. And I'll be right there to drive for you and stuff. And so fired the translator. We went over to the apartment, loaded all our bags and luggage up, and took it over to our driver's apartment. We moved in there. We ended up living there for a couple of years. It was on about the 8th floor, and cats would sit out on the balcony, and it was a nice little cozy apartment, had a piano in it, and it was a nice place. We enjoyed it. It was across the river, so we'd take the metro into downtown Kiev all the time and stuff. And it was kind of nice because we had parks and lakes and things all around us. And it was enjoyable. So we started off, Kathy, I went to the embassy, basically found an office. I heard where the embassy was going to go. The U.S. Embassy was going to be located in Kiev. And so I went to where their building was that they were renovating, getting ready to the U.S. Embassy. And I rented right next door to the building. I rented an apartment on about the 4th floor where I could look right into the embassy. And I put in my company. I called it Ziegler and Associates. And so I put us in there and got all set up, got a secretary, got everything dialed in. And I just waited for the embassy to show up. And by the time they came, I had been doing some pretty good business. Things were starting to gel a little bit. I had gotten a couple apartments and renovated them and re-rented them out and made a little money on them and stuff, and on a monthly basis. So I'm starting to get a feel for things, but had a lot of big opportunities presented to me. But I was pretty much, I don't really want to get into anything too big, not until I figure out what this is and make sure that this is a place we're going to be able to stay, So the embassy came in. I remember the first day, the guard who was in the front, I got to know him a little bit. He came over and told me, hey, there's somebody here finally. So I went over and I walked down the hallways and I'm hollering, hey, is anybody here? Is anybody here? And I opened a door and there's a gal in there going through some boxes. And I said, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm the welcome wagon. My name's Ziggy, And she turned around and said, where are you at? Where are you from? What are you doing here? I said, I have the office. My office is right next door. I said, and I said, I just want to let you know if there's anything I can do to help you guys, just let me know. And she goes, oh man, well, I need a fax machine right now. I can't get everything hooked up here. And I go, I got one in my office next door. Come on over. So I took her over and she made some fax and she made a couple copies, and that began my relationship with the U.S. Embassy. And they kind of looked at me as just the essential part of them trying to figure out what to do there. They had a lot of resources, but I'm gonna say this as kind as I can. Most of those resources were pretty stupid when it comes to what was going on in Russia. They just come out of some France or Germany, some place where everything was a little bit normal, and Russia was not normal at all for them. I know that for a fact, and so The guard at the front gate would salute me all the time. I think he thought I was some kind of high up in the place. But I just got an open door policy to the embassy, and it was really good. Kathy was teaching at a school just down the street, and Brianna and Ben were both going to the school, and it was a Russian school, so they were pretty much all speaking Russian and Ukrainian in kindergarten. In Brianna's class, they were speaking Ukrainian, and Ben's class, they were speaking Russian. And Kathy didn't speak a word of either, but that was the perfect English teacher for, the kids. And they just took seniors. It was really neat. They took a senior for each, both Ben and Brianna, and they basically had them sit in their class with them. And they helped them, and they translated for them, and they helped them with their lessons. And, they went pretty fast. I mean, they picked up the language real quick, a lot quicker than Kathy and I did. I mean, I remember one time we were in a bus, and a little old lady was screaming at me, hollering at me at the top of her lungs, rah, 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 rah. And I go, I'm just looking at her like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you want. And Brianna pulls my pant leg. She says, Dad, she says you're standing on her foot. And then she says in Ukrainian to the lady that he's sorry, he didn't know he was standing on your foot. And the lady smiled and looked at her because she was this little American girl speaking Ukrainian. And and Ben would speak Russian because at his age they were speaking Russian. See, when Ukraine became a independent country, at that time it was under the Russian yoke, All the schools were teaching Russian, the whole energy of the place was Russian. And Ukraine has a different language and a different way of thinking and a different philosophy. And so they decided to instill that in the kids, starting with kindergarten, and then every year they were going to move it another year, so they'd follow those kids, just like with them and the teacher, following them until they were 12th grade. And by 12th grade, the entire school system would be teaching Ukrainian and would, kind of bringing back the artist. Ukraine was known as a home of the artists and the poets and the musicians. It's why they came down and hit it so heavy when they took everybody out to the gulags, is because and they didn't want free speech, and they didn't want artists and musicians and people speaking their mind. So a lot of the people that were there were taken away by Stalin and his group. And so they were pretty excited about having that kind of energy come back to Ukraine, the love, peace, and understanding generation, a little bit of the hippie world it reminded me of. And so we got settled in, and I started at the embassy, and I found out that the new ambassador, Papaduke was his name, my first ambassador to Ukraine, was coming in the next week. And so I went over the day he got there, and I walked in. He came in, and while I was upstairs, and I just shook his hand. I welcomed him. He said, well, what's your position here? I said, I don't really have a position here. I said, I got an office next door. I'm an independent businessman, and I help people, get settled here, and I teach people how to survive in this country. And, my business is construction and real estate. And he was like, wow, that's great. He goes, one of the first goals I really want to have here is I want to create the first American Chamber of Commerce in the Soviet Union. He said, Moscow embassy's been here a long time, and they haven't been able to pull that off in Moscow, and I want to do it here in Kiev. He said, how many business people do you think are here? And I said, well, there's 7 or 8 of them. They're all my good friends. And he said, well, can you get them together for a meeting tomorrow? I said, yeah, sure. I'll get them all there. I'll get them all here. So I called everybody and invited them all into the room, and that next day we came in, and Papaduke said, I'm going to form an American Chamber of Commerce, and I want to put this together, and then I want to use it to really help business here and business abroad coming in. And so, why don't you guys put this together? Let's figure out who we can have as president and vice president and the secretary, and we'll do this whole thing. Well, all my friends looked at me and like, Ziggy's going to be the president. He should be. He's the guy that gets everything done for us and helps us in every way, because most of them are all corporate guys, and they were stuck. And, I was always giving them a hand and showing them shortcuts and figure out way through things. And so, but it turned out that a new guy had just come into town, and he was from Johnson & Johnson, and he was a pretty big heavyweight in Johnson & Johnson. They brought him in there because they knew it was going to be a pretty big market for him. And I guess he invited everybody out to his house for dinner the night before the election, and he was just telling them, look, we can't have this guy. He's not connected to any company. He's just a freelancer and a floater. And from what I've seen to the guy, he's a little wild. And everybody's laughing, and they're like, no, really, this is, I'll be happy to take the president's board. It'd be a good representation, to have a big company, and I can get financing and money from the company to kick this whole thing off. And, so anyway, he managed to convince enough of them that he got elected as president, and then I nominated as vice president someone else I wanted to keep an eye on him, and he went in as vice president. Well, then someone stood up and said, I nominate Ziggy to be secretary of the first American Chamber of Commerce in the Soviet Union. And everybody was unanimous. I was voted as, for the secretary, Well, they didn't realize, I don't know that I did either, but I had been dealing with a lot of secretaries in Russia, so I had a sense about this. But, in Russia, the general secretary is the top guy. He's the head dog. There ain't no president or no vice president. They don't mean nothing. It's the general secretary. So in all our dealings with Russians, whenever we would get into some kind of dealing with Russia, they'd always be, where's the secretary? And I'd end up having conversations with him and talking to him, and the president would be trying to stick his head in there. They'd go away, we don't want to talk to you. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it really was. The beginning days of that Chamber of Commerce were just a really good time, and the embassy was wide open to us, and it really felt like a healthy atmosphere for us all, business people who were all there. We were on an island together. That's what we felt like. We were all there, and we had new survivors come in all the time, and we connected as a group, and we helped each other, and we supported each other, and it was a really kind of a really cool time to be there. So I started the first real estate company in the Soviet Union, foreign-owned real estate company, because before all this happened, there wasn't really real estate. You basically got your apartment from the government. When your child got old enough, they got their apartment from the government. So a lot of times they would move the kids in with mom and dad. They would rent the apartment out to somebody, but there was no business operation doing that. And because there were so many foreigners coming in looking for real estate and apartments and places, you couldn't buy anything. It was a little bit like, I guess, Mexico and the 99-year lease thing. You could actually own the building you put on the property, but at all times the government owned the property. So what they do is somebody would build an apartment complex, and they would come in, the government would come in and say, well, that's great, you got the building on our land, and we're not going to charge you any rent, but we're going to actually own the elevator. And every time someone goes up the elevator, we're going to charge her, we're going to charge her for the space of the elevator, and it's this much a year. And, Russia had a way of getting into your pocketbook in more ways than you could ever dream of. In fact, I got used to, just because I always wanted to remind myself that everybody there wanted in my pocketbook, so I started carrying my wallet in my front pocket. Just because it was such a heavy reminder that keep your money in front of you, get ready, this is going to be a sumo wrestling match, the guy's going to try and figure out how he can get more money out of you. And out of that kind of sense and feeling, I created a class that I taught to foreigners when they came in that was really well received, and it was called Ukrainian 101. And Ukrainian 101 was to teach you how to deal with officials in your capacity, because what they would tend to do is they would look at you and they would say, okay, like they try and evaluate who you are and how far they could go. And then they'd say, what do you want to do here? Oh, well, I'm Cargill, and I want to do seeds, and I want to have tractors, and I want to do this. And then they'd go, well, what are you thinking about spending? And they'd go, oh, we're going to spend $2 million. And, oh, okay. And, you see their eyes would get bigger, and then they'd be like, okay. And then they'd be like, well, let's do a deal. And they would do a deal and kind of come up with a concept of how much money it was going to cost and what they were going to do. And if the guy was accepting of it, they would go, no, you know what? We don't think that deal's any good. Here's our new deal. More and more and more. And the new deal, more. Until you finally said, no, stop. And they'd go, oh, okay, we'll stop. That's it. That's your tolerant level. So what I taught them was, when you walked into the room with them, you told them what you wanted, and you made it lower than what you were willing to pay. And when they said, oh, no, we're going to need more, you threw your briefcase down, and you screamed at the top of your lungs, and your translator translated, and you picked up your briefcase, put your stuff in it, and turned to walk out the door. And they'd all go, wait, come back. Okay, we accept. You know, I say I saved millions of dollars for a lot of companies that came into Ukraine just in the Ukrainian 101. And I taught the wives where to go shopping and how to exchange money. I taught the kids, things about school and being, what to do and stuff. And I did a lot of safety stuff and just keeping yourself safe. And I, worked with their drivers. Usually they all had drivers, and I worked with them. And I just kind of did a lot of protecting, taking care of people who probably would have been eaten pretty fast in that, dog eat dog world of Russia falling apart and then coming back together in this new country in Kiev, Ukraine being formed. And even though it was the heart of the poets, it still had the depth of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was all about corruption. It wasn't in a bad way. They looked at it as just good business. For example, the number one job in the place was the guy in the visa office, giving visas to travel, because you needed them if you wanted to go anywhere. So he had champagne, he had the dentist, he had the butchers, he had everybody giving him tons of stuff, and and to get what they wanted when they wanted to travel. And even to the point it got a little strange at times. Like I remember this mom telling me how happy she was her daughter was a prostitute because she was making so much money, and they were all being able to have good things and take care of themselves because the daughter was making so much money, and she was so proud of her, and they just had a different way of looking at things. I always said to people that when I got into Russia, I felt like, I'm a smart businessman. I've built businesses all over the world. I know what I was doing. I felt like they stuck me under the ground, upside down with my feet sticking up, and they would tickle me every once in a while just to let me know I was still there. I couldn't find my way. I think it took me about a year to get to where I was level ground, eyes out. Now I know where I am. Now I know what I'm doing. And I started to have a sense. The propaganda machine in America worked as good as the one in Russia did. We thought they were a superpower. And they thought we were Dallas and Santa Barbara, the two shows they got on television there. They thought everything had to be like, streets are painted of gold and the houses are made of chocolate. And if you're trying to tell me there's a homeless person in America, I'm going to tell you you're nuts. There ain't nobody homeless in America. Everybody's got a mansion and a palace, It was amazing how you'd find out all the differences that we had here, our feelings of the Soviet Union and their feelings about America, And we were lucky because I'm telling you, a lot of people we met in the beginning, we were the first Americans they'd ever met. First contact they had. Wholesome family, wife, kids. Sorry, I got something going on my phone here. I'm going to fix that. We had my wife and I, our two kids, people invited us over to their houses for dinner all the time. Just wanted to ask us questions. What's it like? Where are you from? Where you're from? And, what is it like living there? And why are you here? What's wrong with you? So the what's wrong with me will come out later in some of the stories down the road. But I really appreciate you being here. And it's a little bit more about our life there, but I'll talk more about some of the undersides of things that happened because we had some pretty powerful stuff going on at the time. And later I found out a lot more about what was really going on with us in the beginning. But I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to continuing it with you. But and I think when I'm done, you're going to learn a lot about a lot of countries because, I spent 5 years in 4 different countries, and I learned a lot about them. It gave me a universal perspective on life and kind of a universal perspective on you and me. So I love you all. Namaste. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. I appreciate your support here on Patreon and hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life. Bye now.